Let's start off with the overall market performance in today's session. Massive blood that we're seeing coming through in the markets, especially in Europe. Markets down around 5%. This is despite the fact that we saw short selling bans coming through for most economies there. Still no reprieve coming to the fore.
Yeah, it was a weak day to start off with. We had the week close in the Dow. Obviously, that market was going to be closed today, so taking most of our lead from the European market. It was weak in the early session. Then mid-afternoon, it really started to get pummeled. I think we dropped another 300 points in the last hour or two. Really on the back of concerns of recession in Europe, the ongoing debt concerns. I see there was a little bit of concerns about Angela Merkel losing an election in her hometown, which really indicates that, German voters maybe not so keen to be bailing out the rest of the Europeans as much as they were before. Banking stocks on the back foot, some lawsuits against some of the big banks from Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. So really not a great day in the markets at all.
Well, Brett, let's just take a look at how much of a concern these risks are, because we've seen negative news before, and I suppose we need to weight them in terms of importance and significance going forward with regards to it driving sentiment. And I suppose the banking stocks, which we saw coming under significant pressure, and you mentioned the lawsuits for many banks, Bank of Scotland being one of them, Deutsche Bank also on the back foot on the back of the CEO talking about some negative news going forward for banks. Do you think this could spill into the South African banking performance?
Look, I mean, our bank's obviously not in the same amount of threat. I think it's just spilling over into our market in general and just financials overall a little bit on the back foot. I see that the CEO of Deutsche Bank coming out, Joseph Ackerman, saying that things are as bad as they were in 2008. The banks are as well a bit better capitalized, but certainly the market overall a bit negative. So, yeah, I think it is quite serious. I think our market, it's failing to really respond. We saw a little bit of action over the last couple of weeks, but now we're starting to drift back down again. And we're going into not the best time of the year, September, October, a little bit more nervous for the markets. And now we're going to have to see if we're going to see some more stimulus coming out, because that seems to be what the market's looking for. Give us some stimulus, otherwise we're going to see a sell-off.
But stimulus, Brett, does that prompt a sustainable recovery in your mind?
No, probably not. And this is kind of the problem that we see, is that the markets are becoming reliant on these stimulus packages, QE1, QE2, QE3. But we're certainly seeing that what's happening is that the market, without any impetus, really is drifting into no man's land and starting to go weak on the back of that. All
right, let's touch on Foschini. Sales are up 17.3% in the first 5 months of the year, talking about increasing its trading space around by 7% in this current financial year. We're still seeing profitability coming through for the retail space in the country.
Yeah, really defying the rest of the market. I mean, retail is on very, very high PEs. Obviously, markets now starting to price in the probability of an interest rate cut at the end of September, and the retail is taking the impetus from that. Certainly quite high, though, in my view, only for the risky.
Well, let's touch on AVI, also out with results. Headline earnings per share from continuing operations up around 31%. It seems that if you do have a bit of exposure to the South African consumer, Brett, at this point, this is where the money actually lies. And we'll touch on the construction sector, which is chalk and cheese when you look at what's happening within the retail space or the food space when you look at a company such as AVI.
Yeah, very nice numbers coming through from AVI. Good containment on the cost side. Really, their statement going forward saying that that's really where they're going to have to see the growth at the moment. They're a little bit concerned about where the South African consumer is going to be sort of for the year going forward. AVI trading around 34, 35 Rand. We've got a target price of about 37. So we don't expect too much more upside from here, but certainly not a bad set of results from them.
And of course, dividends also up around 25%. We saw the likes of WBHO and Avenge coming out with results today, and a dire number that we've seen. Headline earnings per share down significantly, but we saw Murray and Roberts last week actually posting a full year loss. Is this the end of the negative news, Brett, would you say, for the construction sector?
No, not necessarily. I think that the tough times are going to be here for a while. I mean, we've seen a lot of issues coming through the Avenge struggling a little bit in the South African and its Australian operations. I think ultimately the stocks, on attractive PEs, they're not priced really for success. So a lot of that bad news is in the price, but I still think they're going to be sluggish definitely into the middle of next year. So, there's no real burning need to go and rush out and buy these stocks.
Would you want exposure to these stocks going forward, Brett? Do you think that we could actually see a significant turnaround within the cycle?
Well, I think at the end of the day, one needs to have exposure to some construction. You need to have diversification in your portfolio. And the likes of Avenge and WBHO are really amongst our top picks within the sector. But don't look for these stocks to double or do even 30% kind of returns anytime soon.
A stock, I suppose, that many people would want to have held was the likes of Metrics. We saw profits increasing by 155%. Your sense on Metrics, because we know that it's now been bought out by Jinshuan. Your view on the overall copper scenario because they're painting a very nice picture at this stage.
Yeah, so Metric's an interesting one. I mean, obviously those results very, very pleasing for them. The real story is around the Zhuanshan takeover. That should go through by the end of the year if everything goes according to plan. So Metric's trading around R8.30, the takeover to come in at R8.90. So it's trading at quite a nice little discount for someone who thinks that the deal's done and dusted. The concern that you would have is obviously there might be a bit of overhang in stock for whatever reason if the deal wasn't to go through. But it looks pretty much on track at the moment. So more than likely they'll be delisting towards the end of the year and at R8.90. So about 6 or 7% upside with fairly good chance of that going through at the moment.
Okay, Brett, and just going forward, are you overall bearish, or do you think that there is a little bit of hope going forward for the world economy and that you should be a very strong participant within the equity market?
Yeah, so going forward, we are overweight equities. I think at the end of the day, we're going into a nervous time in the market. So in the very, very short term, I think you're going to see this volatility continuing. But we're looking at our market on a PE of 12. Our forward PE is sitting kind of around 11. So we see a lot of value in the market. I think one just needs to be a little bit patient.